Every fantasy RPG has several things in common, not the least of which are the races: dwarves, elves, men, and orcs. Orcs often get pushed to the side as low level villains for your campaign or some kind of just nuisance to be randomly rolled on a chart. My biggest problem with modern fantasy orcs is that they just look like green people. They don't look like monsters anymore. In Advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Edition, orcs looked like these horrendous pigmen. They had these elongated snouts and their tusks were very pronounced. Nowadays, you have basically just buff green dudes and the occasional well endowed Scandinavian woman who happens to be painted green. So, it doesn't really make sense anymore that they're treated as the villains. Originally, you could pass it off as they were, in fact, monsters. Now, they're pretty much a standard race in almost everything. But the game does everything in its power to make sure that you don't play an orc. Because they're monsters. Because there's an idea that if you stat out an orc correctly, they don't make suitable player characters. Well, the simplest solution to that is merely to alter the setting a little bit. If you change elves too much, they're no longer elves. If you change dwarves too much, they're not dwarves. And you can't do anything to humans. But orcs are kind of unique. Sure, you can always have the green warmongers that we've come to know and love and dread rolling. Or they could be something different. In my tabletop setting, orcs are a mercenary culture. They're still warriors. They're still considered uncivilized savages by the majority of the races. But they're useful. In fact, they have a higher ranking in the big evil empire than elves do, just because of the history. The biggest and easiest change that you can do to orcs is their physical appearance. Pretty much every fantasy setting that doesn't use orcs just reflavors them and calls them something different. Take the inheritance cycle, for instance, Aragon. They have Urgles. Giant, brutish, monstrous race. Hated by the civilized peoples. But they're just orcs. They're legitimately just orcs. That's really all I have to say on the subject of orcs. But I think they could be more interesting.